Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how you can build a form completely from scratch for your website to either collect information, like if you want it to go into a database, or you might want to put a test or a quiz on your website, a survey or something like that. In this video, I'm going to be showing you different input fields that you can use in creating your own form. All you need to do to get started is two files. One file is going to be whatever name that you want as long as it has a HTML extension, and the other file is for your styles, and of course that needs a .css extension. Once you have these files, then you just open them up in your IDE or your text editor of choice. So we have a blank file right here, and let's use a boiler. If you're using Visual Studio Code, just type the exclamation point. So we have our boiler, and we want to link to the style sheet, which is empty at the moment. So let's link to the style sheet. All right, great. I like to, whenever I'm working on a project, I add this MetaFresh up here, and every 30 seconds, this page is going to refresh. And I do that so I can see the changes as I'm typing them. And I also have Visual Studio Code set up to automatically save. Every time I make a change, it automatically saves it, so I don't have to save it. Now, there's going to be a trick for getting this right here to work. Actually, it's not a trick. I had the wrong URL in there. Alright, so this is the URL right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is whenever I start a project, I like to outline the project with comments before I even get started. So that's what I'm going to do here first, is outline the different sections that we're going to be creating in this. So here's the outline. I'm going to have the first name, last name, date of birth, email, address, phone number, checkboxes, multiple choice questions, comments, select options, upload file, a required checkbox, and finally the submit button is going to be at the bottom. So that's the outline of what we're going to be creating. So I'm going to, around all these comments, I'm going to put a tag, a form tag. So just type form, the action, I'm going to leave that blank. Method equals post. You could leave this blank too because this is a HTML tutorial, but I'm going to put it there anyways. And above the form, we're going to add a heading, and this is just going to be, please fill out the form. Okay, next. Alright, first I have the body tag, set the box sizing, I gave it a margin, I picked a font, I set it to display flex direction is column, align items to the center, justify content to the center. This is a black, it turns out black. I gave it a padding. Next, I'm styling the heading tags. Give it a blue color, center the text, and give it a margin. Next, I'm going to set the font size of the heading tag, 1H1, and I want to give it a more spacing. Okay, so that's a little bit of editing for the style. And now let's work on the first section, which is the first and last name. So inside this form, I'm going to nest another div. So inside the form tags, I'm going to nest a div, and this is where all the form parts are going to go. So I'm going to move these comments, or you could just move the first one that you're working on. So the first one I'm working on is first and last name. This div has an ID of form. There's a little bit of styling I'm going to do to this form first. So for the form styling, I want the width to be 100%. I gave it some padding. And for the ID, this div right here, I want to align the content to the left and also give that a width of 100. Now for any div that is inside of the form, I want to give it a bottom margin of 15 pixels. Alright, so let's go back over here now. First thing, give it a heading, and then add a div with a class. This is the name of the class that I chose. Then add input. So let me break this down for you. You need to put the type of input, which is text. You need to give it a name, and placeholder, that's optional. I chose a placeholder just to keep it simple so I don't have to have a label. So if I were to type label, then it would look like this, and it would look like this, but I chose not to do that, so I'm going to remove the label and just leave it like that. And then I'm going to add the last name. So I have the first and last name, and since I have a new class, we need to add the style for that. Alright, let's style the heading H2 tag. I give it a font size of 16. I want the text to be left, and I put that so that it overwrites the right setting. I give it a top margin of 30 pixels and a bottom margin of 10 pixels. Next, I have this class, which is this right here. I want it to display flex. I set the width to 100%. I justify the content to space between. Bottom margin is 15 pixels. Text align is center, and align items center. This is part of Flexbox. So justify content, that means from left to right, and align items is from top to bottom for Flexbox. The next style is for the input type of text and text area and date. I want to set the background to a light gray color, and give it a border radius of 7 pixels. I also want to give the border a light gray background and then set the padding to 8 pixels. Alright, so next, let us go to the next section with it, which is the date of birth. So I'm just going to move this comment up here. So first I give it a heading, just like this one. And under the heading, I'm going to add a div with the same class name of input underscore div. And then I'm going to put an input with type equals date. I formatted this, so it's good. It's always good if you're going to nest a lot of content inside of divs to show the end of where the mother div is so that you don't get confused. So this is the end of this div right here. Right, so we have 2 text inputs and then 1 input that is a date. So if you click on it, then you'll see a date pop up. So you could pick any date, or you could type in 0731 1978, something like that. Of course, now we need to style that a bit. So real quick, I'm going to show you what I did. This is div with the class of input underscore div, and the input type is date. I set the font size to 16. I moved those to separate lines so you can see that this covers 3. And on this one, you have, this is basically the same, but one is for input type text and one is for input type date. And you're just setting them to the width of 100%. And for date, I changed the color. That's completely optional if you want to do that. Okay, so now let's go back over here. The next field is going to be email. So email is pretty much the same as these, but it's got a line of its own. So just have, this is input div, and in the input div, I put the input tag, which is type text, name email, placeholder is email address. Alright, so next we have address. So let's move that comment up here. So what do we have for address? First we have a div name with the same class. Then we have input type text like that. Give it a name and a placeholder. Then we have another div for address line 2, and the same thing, input type, name, and placeholder. Now we need a city and state. So city state is going to be like a clone of this, so you could literally copy this, paste it down here, and then replace the names. So that's actually what I'm going to do. Change this to city, state. There's a better way to do state, but I'm not going to do that in this tutorial. Just something that you can figure out once we get to the select option part of the form. Alright, so I got city, state, and postal code. So we're done with the address section, but we're missing a heading for this. So let's copy, say email, do one for email, and then address. Alright, that's good. Now the next is phone number. Phone is going to be identical to email with just changing this, the heading, the name, and the placeholder. Next we have contact checkbox, and checkboxes allow you to make multiple selections. So if you have a form where you need to be able to make multiple selections, then you use checkboxes. So input type. So the input types we use so far are text and date. And now I'm introducing a different input type. This is going to be checkboxes. So I add the heading just like before. For this one, instead of using the class input on the div, we're just going to use a div without any class. Alright, next we're going to do input type checkbox. The name is contact method and the value. Next I have input type checkbox. Again, they need to be the same name, but the value needs to be different. So it's phone number. Same with the next. Everything from here to there needs to be the same, but the value needs to be different. And then the final checkbox option is right there. So that's how you add checkboxes. You need to use the same name, but change the values. Okay, we did checkboxes. Now we're going to do multiple choice questions. We need a heading, then a div with the input class, then a div with a class called left align, and then we're going to add 2 more of those left align classes. Next, I have 4 input fields in each div. In each left align div, I'm going to put 4 inputs, so there's 12 zodiac signs, so 3 columns, and in each column there's going to be 4 rows. So we have column number 1, now this is column number 2, and column number 3. So I'm going to refresh this, and as you can see, they are centering these, and so we need to create this class called left align so that all of these, instead of being centered, they align to the left. So let's go back to the style sheet, and let's create a div called left align, and then say text align left, and make sure it overwrites any other settings that may center it like this. So I refresh the page. Now you see that all of these are aligned. So the difference between the checkbox right here and radio, as you can see, is that with checkbox you can select multiple choices, whereas radio there's only one choice. So if you look here, you see all of these have the same name with different values, and in checkboxes they all have the same name but different values. But the difference is with the radio, you can only select one of them. So with that one, let's do the next one, which is comments. So first we give it a heading, and then we're going to use the input underscore div class, and then we're going to use text area tag. I'm going to give it 6 rows and a name of comment, and then I put a placeholder here, and let's refresh the page. Alright, so we need to make this text area so that it's 100% wide, just like the other inputs. Let's go to our style sheet over here, and we're editing the tag of text area. So type text area, and then we want to give it a width of 100% and a minimum height of 75 pixels. And now you see that looks better. So what is the next section? The next section is the input type of select. So remember when I said you could do state different? I am not going to show you with state. I'm going to do it real quick, and then I'm going to show you how you could do that on your own. Alright, so I just did a few states in here to show you what you could do instead if you feel like typing 50 states, but I'm going to put it back the way it was. That's just to show you another way that you could do this particular field right here. So for the state field, you might want to make that a select field, but I'm going to change it back the way that it was, and then I'm going to show you the next part. So first let's add a heading. Then we need a div. This div does not need a class like the other ones. Then we add this tag, this input tag called select. Give it a name and an option. So our first option is going to be select 1. And I just put value equals none because there is no value for this. And I want this to be automatically selected. And I also want it to be disabled. Next option is C++. Next option Java. Next option JavaScript. Next option Perl. And just add as many options as you want. And that's how you do the select input type. Now we need to style it. So let's do select is our input. And the next thing we want to do is give it a background. Change the background color, give it a border radius of 5 pixels, and give it a border, make the width 100% so it goes all the way across. And also we want to have padding in there. So this is what it looks like, and you see, you can select. Once you select it, you can't go back to this select one. So that's how select works. So next, what do we have? Next we have upload file. So this is another form field option, where you have the option to upload a file. So let us go ahead and do that. Now this one's going to be a little different because we don't need a div for this. It's just one line. We have a heading, and we're going to call this upload doc. And then after that, we're doing the input type is file. So input type for this is file. Give it a name, and that's basically it for that. Alright, the last input on this form before our button is going to be a required checkbox. So it's going to be a checkbox just like we did over here, except we're going to add the attribute that says you have to check this box before you can submit. Alright, so for this, we want a heading tag like we've been doing. I'm going to give it a style inline. Instead of style over here, I'm just going to give it an inline style. And I just want to align the text to the center. And to overwrite the default setting, which is to align left, I'm gonna put important. And then an input with type is checkbox, and we want to give it a name. And then after that, we want to say that this is required. And then following the checkbox, I'm going to put a link, and I want to target to a new window. And the text is going to say, I accept the terms. Alright, so this is what that looks like, and we're going to do a little bit of styling to that. So for this is a link that's in our form nested within the h2 tag. So I'm going to do form h2 link with a color of red, text decoration of none, and when you hover over it, you give it a text decoration of underline. So when you hover over it, it underlines, and when you don't hover, there's no underline. So we're almost at the end of this form. We have a submit button. So let's move this here, and let's add a button. Alright, after that, we need to add the text that is going to go on the button. And I'm creating a class for this. So I just called it submit, and button type is submit, name is submit. Now we need to style this. So let's go back to the style sheet. So we have general styling for the button. We're going to give it a margin of 10 pixels, a background that's blue. Color of the button is going to be white. I'm going to give the button some padding, some letter spacing, make it a pointer cursor, remove the border, give it a border radius of 12 pixels, make it all caps, and font weight is bold. And when you hover over it, the background color is going to change. Now, the class, this would be like a general for all buttons. So say you had a website, so all buttons would be this. Now for this form, I created a class specifically for this button because I want it to be 96% wide And one more thing, I want to set the font to normal. So for all other buttons, the font is going to be 600, but for this one, I want it to be normal. So for this tutorial, you can actually remove the font weight and move this here, remove this class, and remove this class. And the reason is because these settings are just for this form and not for a website. So if you were creating a website and you had buttons with different styles, then you would need a separate class for that. But since this is just for this form, then I don't need a separate class for the button. It looks like we are at the end, friends. There is one more thing I'd like to say. Let's look at what we did. We got several different input types. If you click on this, then a window will pop up and you can select what you want. The last thing I want to say is, could you do me a favor, please hit like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, why not like and subscribe? Thank you.